The second half of the season has arrived, and we're going to be answering your questions about trades, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero Jr., record predictions, Elliot Ramos, Camilo Doval, and much more.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. This episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And coming up on today's show, it's a mailbag edition. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions on Twitter. They were, appropriate second half type questions, and so I really appreciate each and every one of you who took the time to submit a question. So jumping right in, the first two questions related come from SF Sports Fam and Toby. SF Sports Fam says, would you prefer a trade for Bo Bichette or Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? If so, which prospects would we need to give up? And then Toby says, Marco Luciano and Carson Wisenhunt for Bo Bichette. I think we need an everyday shortstop. He seems like he needs a change of scenery. And so to answer the first part of the question, I would prefer a trade for Bo Bichette, even though I'm trying to pull up the trade values website as I am answering this. The reason I would prefer a trade for Bo Bichette is because, the Giants' first baseman right now is Lamont Wade Jr., who has been awesome. And I think at shortstop, there's more of a long-term and short-term need. And I know Bo Bichette is not having a good season, but he's consistently been a very good hitter at the major league level, and he's young, and he's under team control through 2025. And so this is not a rental. He's 26 years old, and in his career, he's hit 290. And remember, if you're a regular on this show, listener of this show, the league average batting average right now is 243. And so consistently, way better than average at batting average. And then a 332 slugging, which is way better than, not way better, but it's better than average. And then a 466. Did I say slugging? I meant on base percentage. Excuse me. 332 on base percentage, 466 slugging. Overall, what am I saying? I can't speak. 20% above average offensively. Makes a ton of contact, especially in-zone contact is what I'm looking at. As a result, strikeout rates around 20%, which is better than Major League average. Before this year, 3 years in a row of 20 home runs or more. And he does chase. That's one thing that he's got going against him. Good hard hit rate. And he plays shortstop. Okay, as you know, if you're following along, and if you ask the question in particular, defensively he hasn't graded out as a very good defender there, but he's been okay, I guess. It depends on which metric you're looking at. By outs above average, this year at 0, last year -2. That's not bad, but overall in his career across 5,000 innings, we're talking -18. And defensive runs saved in his career -7. And so, maybe there's an issue there, and maybe it's not something you do. He's also just really struggled offensively this season with like I said, 20% above average in his career, about 31% below average offensively this season. So he also was interviewed when the Giants came to Oracle Park, or the Blue Jays came to Oracle Park recently, and he talked about how nice it was, and that he and his wife were both commenting about how nice they found the stadium, and that he said that he loved playing there. And it surprised him because on TV he said like it looks like it's maybe just too big, but he just really liked it. I think the Blue Jays were in town and the weather was warm, so maybe don't tell Bo Bichette that it's normally not warm like that. But players don't really have much of a say when it comes to trades, and it's just Vlad is also a really good player, obviously, but first base. Let's see, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He's kind of been an overall inconsistent player. I think people expected him to be a total monster, but he's just been merely good the last few years rather than elite like he showed in 2021 when he hit 48 homers as a 22-year-old. And his defense has not graded out well at all at first base. Minus 31 outs above average in his career in just 4,300 innings. So neither one really rating as a good defender. And he, just like Bo Bichette, a free agent after the 2025 season. So 2 years of team control. I do think there's a chance that one or both of these guys could be dealt by Toronto. And that's why we're talking about this. And I think Bichette just is a better overall fit. And so if we're doing, I'm just going to do the trade simulator thing on baseballtradevalues.com just to get kind of an idea roughly. For some reason, it's not letting me select a team. Do you have to like pay now or something? I don't know. But I think so Toby says Luciano and Wisenhunt for Bo. I really do think that that's kind of a reasonable sounding return. Now, Blue Jays fans might not think so, but for 2 years of a player, really 1 year and 2 months, 1 season plus 2 months of this season, it's not, that. Why is it not letting me select a team? That maybe you have to pay now for this website or something. But it's kind of a short-term play, and Bo Bichette is not having a great season. And Luciano is a former top 10 prospect, and he's, still young, like 22 years old. And Carson Wisenhunt is considered a top 100 prospect himself. So you're getting 2 top 100 prospects for a year and some change of a good player who's not playing well this season. I think that that's kind of a reasonable sounding deal. And both Luciano and Wisenhunt have each 6 years of team control. I think Luciano may even have another year of optionability. Yeah, next year he'll still have the ability to be optioned. So I'm not sure that that's a trade the Giants should make for such a short-term play at Bo Bichette, but he did seem to really like San Francisco, so maybe you could work out an extension, but maybe you're not comfortable wanting him to be your long-term shortstop given that he's not great defensively there. I think the reason they backed out of the Correa deal had a lot more to do with defense than offense. They were worried about his mobility at short, and it just totally changed their evaluation from him as a $350 million player over 12 years or 13 years actually to something much different. And that's why they backed away from that deal. But regardless, I mean, if Brett Wisely, this is like big, important time for Wisely and or Tyler Fitzgerald to show that they don't have much time. The trade deadline is I think it's the 31st of July this year. It used to always be the 31st, I think, and then it suddenly was August 1st sometimes. But that's like less than 2 weeks away. And so the clock is ticking, and I do think a Bo Bichette trade makes some sense, and he could be really good, but also he's really not been good this year. So maybe you get a player who's just slumping big time when you trade for him, and then you give up 2 pretty nice prospects in Luciano and Wisenhunt. So that's what makes it seem fair, that it kind of makes me squirm, but it would probably make Blue Jays fans squirm. So that's what makes it sound pretty fair. I couldn't get the website to work for whatever reason, even though that website should not be taken as gospel. It's just a good conversation starter, I think. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, predictions for the Giants' record both at the end of the season and during this soft patch of the schedule. We'll get into it in just a minute, and before we do, today's episode of Locked on Giants is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city. And baseball is just a game that lends itself to travel if you're a fan. And right now, the Giants are in Denver for 3. It's a beautiful place to be. Some of you are probably there already. And then they go to LA for 4. Probably going to be hot, but a nice, there's some nice places to stay there too. They go to some other really cool destinations: Seattle, Milwaukee, San Diego, Baltimore, Kansas City. So yeah, from hotels that look over stadiums, which I've personally experienced this year at Fenway, to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, myself included. It's the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or, like today, getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. And also, Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California. And I personally have taken advantage of those promotions multiple times and plan to do so again tonight. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, as promised, we are going to get to more of your questions, and we'll provide some answers to the best of our knowledge. Thanks again for making Locked on Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we'll be breaking down the start of a critical stretch to what we call the second half of the season, even though they've played 97 games. So there's only 65 remaining. So 97 played, 65 remaining. Do the math. They're more than halfway through the season by quite a bit. 16 games past the halfway point. So the fact that there's 3 games under 500, yeah, we'll get into record predictions and all that coming up, but they've got a soft schedule, the easiest schedule by, per Fangraph's strength of schedule calculation, which I think looks at projected records for the teams that they're going to play the rest of the way. So we'll be breaking down the series in Denver. Hopefully the bats can kind of stay hot in Denver, and then they can pitch. It's a tough place to pitch. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a reminder that you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. And check out Postcast with Eric Engel on Locked On Sports San Francisco for instant reaction to pretty much every Giants game. That's Locked On Sports San Francisco on YouTube. Subscribe, bell notification, live right after games. Different than this show in that way. And it's just an additional thing we offer here to you here on Locked On Giants. And that feed also shows up on the normal podcast feed for this show, just not on the YouTube channel. So getting to the rest of your questions, or just more questions. Joey says, what's your prediction on the record of the Giants' next 20 games? And then Ed said the next 12 games include road series against the Rockies and Dodgers and home series against the Rockies and A's. How many wins do the Giants need in order to consider themselves competing for a wild card spot? And so for the next 20 games, I think it's worth counting so that's 3 in Colorado. So I'm going to say 2 wins there, 2-1. Okay. It's hard to predict a sweep. And then 4 in LA. And I'm going to say Dodgers take 3 out of 4. So that would be 3-4 overall. And then 4 against the Rockies. So then I'm going to say they take 3 out of 4. So that would be 7-5, right, overall. And then 2 against the A's. And this is where we'll just say it's a 2-game series. I'll say you win them both. I've already kind of lost count. Are we at 9-5 now if they win both of those games against the A's? And then 3 at Cincinnati. I say that's tough. It could kind of go either way. Where are we? 7-5. So let's say they lose it and they go 8-7 after that. And then 4 against the Nationals on the road. And I'll say they win 3 out of 4. So that would be 11-8. And then 3 against the Tigers. I'll say they win the first game. So that'd be 12-8. So that's my prediction for the next 20 is 12-8. And so that would be 4 games over 500. So at that point, they would be sitting 1 game over 500 if they were to do that. And so that's just kind of how I typically never assume sweeps. If it's a 2-game series against a bad team, sometimes I'll just say, okay, I take both of them. And then hopefully when you play a 4-game series at LA, maybe you don't lose 3 out of 4, but you split. And then when you play 3 against the Rockies at home or on the road, hopefully maybe you don't win 2 out of 3, but you sweep, So it's hard to predict, but 12-8 seems reasonable given how soft that is. I mean, that is a lot of, that is 4 plus 3 is 7 plus 2 is 9. So far, 9 games this month to close out the month against the Rockies and A's, 2 of the worst teams in baseball. And then the Reds and Nationals, one of the worst teams in baseball too. And right after the trade deadline, when they may sell off some pieces, and the Tigers could too, right before you play them. So yeah. And then, so the 20 games, I'll say 12-8. I may have miscounted there along the way at some point. And then the next 12 games from Ed, talking about the 3 at Denver, 4 at LA, and then 4 at home against the Rockies, and then 2 against the A's. Does that math add up? So that's 8, 9, 10. That's 13 games. I think you're not accounting for, they have a scheduled doubleheader against the Rockies at home next Saturday. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday, the 27th. So 8, 11, 13. So that's 13 games. So how many games do they need to win out of those 13 to consider themselves? So they can't go 500 during those 13 games. I would say it has less to do with what their win total is in those 13 games and more to do with how many games back are they and how many teams are ahead of them. And the question is to consider themselves competing for a wild card spot. There has not been a single season under Farhan Zaidi when they've considered themselves out of the race. And so the amount of payroll they committed to this year's team, the players they have coming back, Farhan Zaidi himself said this, it's very hard. I think he used the word almost impossible to imagine that they're going to go into the trade deadline and not be in a position where they consider themselves competing for a wild card spot. So for those of you with visions of them selling, they haven't done it pretty much at all. Even when they were more out of when they had players to trade like Bumgarner and Will Smith back in 2019, and then Carlos Rodon. They didn't trade a couple years ago. when they could have. And so I just don't see a scenario unless they like lose all of these games somehow. Then I don't see a scenario in which they really consider themselves sellers. I think teams are just going to be more nimble. And if there's an opportunity to, get rid of a guy who's underperforming in some kind of deal like they did with Mitch Haniger in the offseason, for example, they could possibly look to do something like that. But they also got something that they liked that they thought helped them in the immediate term in return. All right, so Steve says, what do you predict our record will be at the end of the season? I know there are a lot of unknowns, but do you think we are at least above 500 in a wild card spot? Those are two separate questions. Above 500, ? In a wild card spot, ? And it's tough to say because they're 47 and 50. So, you'd have to play 4 games over 500 or better the rest of the way to be above 500. The projections on Fangraphs do have them finishing at 81.4 wins as their median projected win total. So obviously you can't win a fraction of a game. So that's tilting more towards an 81 and 81 record, which I think would drive people insane. But that does mean they're projected to play, basically 3.5 games over 500 the rest of the way, on the wins of having the weakest strength of schedule remaining. So that is a big deal, and they've got to take advantage when they're playing all these games against the Rockies. We didn't even get to, so we said Rockies, we said A's, Nationals, Tigers, more A's, White Sox, Marlins. That's kind of the end. So that's really the end, and that takes you to early September. So basically between now and early September is when they've got to go on their run. And I'm sure in the clubhouse they're talking about that. But in terms of my prediction, let's see. This is what they call like the Fangraphs depths chart projection. ATC is another one, is another projection system, and it has the Giants at 81.2 wins at the end of the year. Another projection system called the Bat X has the Giants at 80.5 wins. So none of these projection systems that we're looking at here have them, like they all have them around 500 basically. And so I'm a fan, and fans don't generally do very good predictions for their own favorite teams because they tend to overestimate what their performance will be. So it's hard to be objective, but I'm hoping that all these players returning, like Robbie Ray and Alex Cobb, helps, the starting staff, trickles down into the bullpen, and that, they can continue to be solid offensively, which they have been, and that it translates. The problem is they're in a little bit of a hole. They're only 3 back, but they are 3 under 500. Be different if you had, established a little bit of cushion where you were over 500, and, every loss you have is in the books and you can't take it back. And they're 3 back, but they've also got 3 teams ahead of them that are out of playoff position that they would need to pass. And they're tied with the Reds at 3 back, and the Cubs are only 4 back. So anyway, long story long, I will predict, I want to say like 83 wins, and that's kind of being conservative, but also slightly optimistic if you just base it off what the projections are saying. I would say 83, 84, as kind of the realistic, optimistic outlook. Realistically, optimistically realistic. I don't know exactly how to say it, but that could be enough. Like when we look at what are the projected records for all of these teams, we're looking at, the Braves and Phillies both in the 90s. And so one of those teams would be a wild card team, probably the Braves. And the projection there is like 92 wins or so. Let's see, Fangraphs. Yeah, 91 wins. And then there's a bunch of like a bunch of teams projected around 83-ish wins. And so if you win about 83, 84, that should be possibly enough to get you in, and that's what the Diamondbacks got in with last year. They won 84 and they went to the World Series. And so the point is just get in and you have a shot. So anyway, coming up in just a minute, will Elliot Ramos keep up this pace, this all-star pace in the second half? And should they trade Camilo Doval? We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs have winded down in other sports, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing quite like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. And right now, I'm looking, and there's a popular same-game parlay between the Tampa Bay Rays and Yankees with Aaron Judge to hit a home run, Juan Soto to record 2+ total bases, Arozarena 2+ total bases, Garrett Cole 5+ strikeouts, and a $10 wager wins $132 essentially. And then the Giants favored in Denver. That's another one to look at. There's just so much, especially with baseball, that you can check out each and every day all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com and again, make the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, here we go. We're going to get to the last round of questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, breaking down this 3-game series in Denver. Giants need to take advantage, like they really do. And last year they had a soft spot right coming out of the All-Star break. They had this kind of soft road trip, and they really struggled on it. And so they can't do that again this year. They've got to take advantage right now, basically for the next month plus. Basically, to taking us to September, they need to kind of dominate. That's like their best path to having, to getting into the playoffs. And we'll break down the beginning of it, 3 games in Denver on Monday. A reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So more questions. The next one coming from Alex, who says, does Elliot Ramos keep up the pace in the second half? And I actually discussed this just the other day, which is fine. But Elliot Ramos, I don't think he keeps up this pace. Is he going to hit 298 with a 365 on base and 523 slugging or better in the second half of the season? Like starting now to the end of the season? I doubt it. I think I'd probably expect more like a little bit above average production, honestly, for the rest of the season. But then when all is said and done, the overall numbers will still be really good because, let's just say his career numbers, he's been about 22% above average now at the major league level versus 50% above average this year. So I would tend to lean more towards those other games counted too, even though it was very inconsistent playing time. This is just a pace that is hard to keep up. And for a 24-year-old, he showed some signs of vulnerability down the stretch to end the first half. Teams started attacking him with like high fastballs and he was chasing. So it wasn't so much like the slider off the plate away that from righties that he used to chase a lot. He's been good at not chasing that, but he started struggling to lay off the high fastball. Even when it's kind of borderline a strike, it's just not really a pitch that his bat path seems to be able to get to, or his timing is just a little bit off. But certainly the one above the zone, you just got to lay off that pitch or you're in trouble. So it'll be interesting to see. I would imagine scouting reports, man, they get around quick. And so I would imagine he's just going to be attacked with that kind of pitch. And it's going to be up to him to make the adjustment. His chase rate has climbed in the last, like, I could look at, and maybe I'll share this on Twitter later, but his like rolling chase rate, and I bet you it's going to see a pretty steep increase over the last little while. And so he's still, I'm 60 games of really good performance isn't enough for me to be like, this is who you are now. I think we definitely need to see it more. And I think he's proven he can play at this level. But the question is, at how high of a level can he play? When I say he can play at this level, I mean at the major league level. But just how good is he? I think that's TBD, to be determined. So it's a big second half for him to show what he can do and who he is. Next question comes from Mikey, who says, Doval trade coming? And this was not the only question about the Giants trading Camilo Doval. And my kind of gut reaction is this would be what is known as selling low. And I don't see any reason for them to sell low on a player like Doval. I just see no reason whatsoever to do so. Doval is under team control through 2027, and he's struggled in 37 innings. He's got a 4.38 ERA, but peripherals that are all significantly better than that. He's struggled with walking guys this season, but if you trade him, teams are gonna want to pay for the struggles, right? They're not gonna pay full price. They're gonna be like, oh, he's struggling, and then I just don't see the reason at all to sell low on Camilo Doval, who's been great in his major league career. 3.07 ERA in about 200 innings, 199 and a third. Strikeout rate 29.9%. League average is around 22%. Ground ball rate 54%. League average is like 42%. Launch angle against him just 3.8 degrees. That is very low. He keeps the ball on the ground. He strikes people out. He does have a bit of an issue walking guys, but and certainly it's been worse than normal this year. This year it's up to a career high 14%. His career walk rate is 10.5% at the major league level, and that's made a big difference. I think is just him not being and also the average on balls in play. There's a lot of kind of stuff that's likely to get corrected over the course of certainly 4 years. What did I say? 2027. So we're talking the rest of this year plus 3 more years. And so I think it would be foolish to sell low on Camilo Doval. I don't see the point. I think he's clearly one of their 8 best relievers. They're rolling out, a bullpen that includes names like, is he better than Sean Jelly, for example? Is he better than Luke Jackson? Yeah, so more likely would I see Luke Jackson traded for nothing and just have Camilo Doval slot into that spot and call somebody up. Then, because if you get rid of Doval, you've still got to call somebody up, and then you've still got Luke Jackson. So I don't see the point of doing that at all. But I do think that Ryan Walker should be closing games starting now. So that's, I've been talking about that a lot recently. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every day airs on Monday, breaking down this important 3-game series in Denver. I think the Giants really kind of need to win at least 2 out of 3, especially since they go to LA for 4 right after this trip. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.